उत्तमं सद्गुरुं वन्दे श्रीकृष्णं तदनन्तरम् गुरुपापात्मनां श्रीकृष्णस्त्वमलात्मना प्रपन्नाहं सदा श्यामा गुरुपादारविन्दयो तस्य प्रेरणया तस्य दिव्यादेशं वदाम्यहम्। मन्नाथ श्रीजगन्नाथो मद्गुरु श्रीजगद्गुरु मदात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोर्पदम् मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यम् भक्तिमूलं गुरोर्कृपा यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तग्मंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशम् मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। Dear devotees, let us do a few minutes of Nam Sankirtan and then I'll explain about Jagadguru Tam Mahaprayan Divas. Bhajo Giridhar Govinda Govinda Govind Gopala Govind Gopala Govind Gopala. Bhajo Giridhar Govind Gopala. Bhajo Giridhar Govind Gopala. Shrimad Sadguru Sarkar ki. Today we're commemorating Mahaprayan Divas. Prayan means to depart. Maha means a great departure, an important or divine departure. But let us understand something about the deeper meaning behind this. You see, this whole Srishti, this whole manifested universe, it has a nature. Sansaratiti iti sansara gachatiti jagat. Sansarasiti sansara. What is sansar? A Sanskrit word for this world. Sansaratiti. It is that which keeps changing from one state into another state. It's always evolving or devolving or doing something. And the word jagat, another word we use for this world, gachatiti. It's always moving. Nothing is static or stationary in this world. Everything from a macro scale, galaxies and clusters of galaxies and superclusters of galaxies all in motion, right down to a cellular level. Our cells are always in motion. Everything in them is moving. To an atomic level, we know that an atom is made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And those electrons are in constant motion. Everything in this world is moving, and everything in this world is changing from one state to another. From day, it changes to evening, then to night, then to early morning, then to morning, then day again. Everything is constantly changing, and one of the reflections of this nature of the world is that everybody who comes into this world also must leave this world. Jo aayega, so jayega. Ye srishti ka niyam hai. This srishti is a product of Maya. So of course that law applies to the souls under Maya, all of us. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Iha sansare khalu dustare, kripaya pare pahi murare. Bhaj govindam, bhaj govindam. Govindam bhaj mudhamate. Jagadguru Shankaracharya says that souls take birth after birth. They are born, then they die, then again they enter into the womb of another woman who's going to be their mother, and again they take birth, and again they die, over and over and over again. Thus, we Maya-bound souls come and go from this world over and over and over again. However, this law of Srishti also applies to divine personalities who come in this world. Not that they are bound by Maya, God himself, even that he subjects himself to this law of the nature of the world, even though he is completely beyond the qualities of Maya, beyond the reach of Maya. And any soul who attains him also goes beyond the reach of Maya. And yet, when those souls, those God-realized souls, come in this world, and when God himself comes in this world, they also stay for a limited time. They also say, okay, it's a material world. I came in this world. I'll go as well. In fact, although they could stay for as long as they want, they tend to stay for a normal lifespan depending on the yug that they came. In Kali Yuga, more or less than 100 years. In other yugs, Dwapar Yuga, Treta Yuga, Sat Yuga, they may stay for thousands of years. Like Bhagwan Ram stayed for 11,000 years because he came in Treta Yuga. Shri Krishna came in Dwapar Yuga, so he stayed for 125 years. It's not that they're bound by Maya, but when they come in this world, they observe that law of Maya. Okay, if I came in this world, I also have to go. We, because we are bound by Maya, we have Mayic attachments, and we perform actions that are motivated by worldly desires. So at the time of our death, we do not want to leave our body, and we do not do so willingly. Therefore, the servants of Yamraj come and forcefully remove us from our body and take us to whatever our next birth is going to be. But when a saint or God leaves this world, Yamraj himself comes. He doesn't send one of his servants. Yamraj himself comes and does pranam and just reminds them, like a personal assistant, that according to the plan, in God's case, when you decided to take avatar, you had decided to stay for this long. So I'm just giving you a reminder, like a personal assistant would remind their boss that you have a meeting at 3 p.m. I'm just letting you know that the time you decided upon has elapsed, and so what you do now at this point is up to you. It's just my job to remind you. So then Krishna goes back to the divine world. Or in the case of a saint, he comes and tells them that if it's a sadhana siddh Mahapurush, a saint who was an ordinary soul, and then did bhakti, and with the grace of their guru became God realized, that soul was born with a destiny. And part of that destiny includes the length of their physical life. How long is this body going to last? So accordingly, when that time has elapsed, even though maybe they were supposed to stay in this body for 73 years, and they got God realized at age 18, but the saint chooses to honor God's laws, although he could leave for the divine world, or she could leave for the divine world the moment they become God realized, but in general they decide to live out the rest of their destiny. So even though they don't need to, they keep undergoing all their physical destiny in this world, and they live out the rest of the age of their body. So when age 73 comes around, Yamraj comes, does pranam to that sadhana siddh Mahapurush, that God-realized soul, and says, your destiny is finished now. If you would like, you can go to the divine world. If you want to stay longer, I have no say in the matter. You're a divine being now. You can do whatever you want. But normally at that time, a saint will leave this world, leave behind their physical body, and go to the divine world. The point is that everybody who comes in this world, whether they be a Maya Baddh Jeev, a Maya Mukt Jeev, a soul beyond Maya, or Mayadhish Bhagwan himself, everybody who comes also leaves. Our body is material. It's made of material elements, and it was formed in our mother's womb. We came and entered into that small body growing in our mother's womb. And then when we leave the world, we leave behind that full-grown body. When God comes in this world, you've heard it explained many times that his body is not formed in his mother's womb. He manifests his divine body in this world. He eternally has a divine body, and he's omnipresent with that divine body, so he just has to make it visible at one place. This is what Shri Krishna does, Shri Ram does, Radharani does. Saints who take avatar, not a sadhana siddh Mahapurush, but a nitya siddh Mahapurush. In other words, a soul who lives with God in the divine world and decides with the will of God to come in this world to help souls on the path to God. That nitya siddh Mahapurush may take a material body. Their body may be formed in their mother's womb, and they may have an ordinary birth, just like us, but they're still not bound by Maya, and they're still not ordinary beings. Or that Nitya Siddh Mahapurush may take a divine body, like if Lalita, Vishakha come on this earth. Those are Radharani's own swanch. They may, depending on what the plan is for them, they may take a material body, or they may come with their divine body. So some saints come in this world with a divine body, some saints come in this world with a material body, and some saints were ordinary souls like us and they became God realized, so they have their same material body from before they were God realized. But in any case, whether it's a sadhana siddh Mahapurush, a nitya siddh Mahapurush, or God himself coming in the form of a saint like Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji, all go back. Most leave their body behind. Some don't, like Mirabai disappeared into the murti of Shri Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji disappeared into the murti of Jagannath Ji. But in most cases, they actually leave their body behind. Shri Krishna, Ram, Radharani, they don't leave their body behind, they disappear. But in general, any divine personality who comes in the form of a saint on this earth actually does leave their body behind, whether it be a material body or a divine body. Anyway, our eyes can't tell the difference. But they leave their body behind and they go back to the divine world. So that is their prayan. They depart this world and they enter, in the case of a sadhana siddh Mahapurush, or re-enter, in the case of a nitya siddh Mahapurush, the divine world. The point of all of this is that a saint's coming to this world and leaving this world is all done with the will of God. When a saint decides to visit this world, it's God's grace. There's a plan for that saint's life, how the saint will live, how they will help the souls. And at the decided time, that saint will leave this world. No saint stays in the world forever. Even God himself doesn't stay in the world forever in the form of his avatars. So, at the appointed time, at the decided time, according to the will of Radha and Krishna, that divine personality goes back to the divine abode, in most cases leaving their divine body in this world. So the followers of that divine personality who accepted that divine personality as their guru, they get to perform the ceremonies that are done normally, the antim sanskar, the shrad, all of that is done for the benefit of the souls. the benefit of the devotees so that they can have that experience and they can process their own devotional emotions. Shree Maharaj Ji was always in his divine status. We've been listening to lectures by Shree Maharaj Ji on the Guru, and he's been explaining many times that God's Yoga Maya power, Yoga Maya, it allows the saint and God to remain connected with their divine status, their internal divine status. That's Yoga. And Maya, they're able to perform Mayic-looking actions, like eating food, talking to people. They can perform Mayic-looking actions, but they're always in a divine state. Shree Maharaj Ji was always in his divine state. His normal state, his natural state, was only revealed here and there in his life, or occasionally, or in certain stages of his life. But it wasn't openly revealed always. What is the natural state of a saint? To be absorbed in divine bliss. That's their natural state. And that's their internal, constant state. But externally, if the saint is to help the souls, the saint cannot just remain absorbed in divine bliss 24 hours a day. Shree Maharaj Ji had many stages in his life that he went through as part of his divine plan to grace all the souls. In the beginning, he was a small baby, a small boy. Even in that state where his mother was teaching him how to walk and how to talk, even then he still had his same divine status and his internal divinity, his own blissful state. As he got older and he started playing outside with the other boys in Mangar, he was acting like an ordinary boy. Although he may have been more charming, more beautiful, more loving, but for material eyes, whoever gazed upon him, he was an ordinary boy. And yet internally, he's absorbed in the divine bliss of Radha Krishna. He started going to school, studying, taking tests, walking to school with the boys, coming home after school, doing all of that, and yet still absorbed internally in his own divine state. Only when he was 16 did he start to reveal what that internal divine state was, or more like he revealed it all at once. He was going to college in Mahu, Sanskrit college, and one day he just walked into the woods, completely absorbed in divine bliss. And for weeks, he kept wandering. Where he went, no one knew, because no one was with him. He was wandering in the jungles of Madhya Pradesh, absorbed, completely absorbed in divine bliss, with no consciousness like we hear of Videha. No consciousness of his body. What does it need? Does he need to sleep? Does he need to eat? Does he need to drink? No consciousness of that. 100% absorbed in his divine state. And whatever villages he came upon, the devotees of God with some knowledge, they recognized that he was in a state of bhav, a state of being absorbed in the divine love of Radha Krishna. And they served him however they could, but he didn't talk to people. He didn't even take food by his own hand. Whatever people fed him, he ate. If somebody changed his clothes, he wore new clothes. Otherwise, he kept wearing the same clothes. So he revealed at a very early age his true inner nature. But then after a couple years of traveling and gracing the devotees at this young age, from age 16 to 18, after a couple of years of gracing them in this manner by allowing them a glimpse of his inner divine state, he started to just control that or conceal that bit by bit, more and more, so that he could actually give proper satsang, go to somebody's house and do Nam Sankirtan, or answer somebody's spiritual question, reveal divine knowledge. He started outwardly concealing his inner truth so that he could behave in a more normal way, and souls would get this kind of benefit from him. Only certain souls could be benefited by glimpsing Maharajji's true inner divine state. But more souls would be benefited if Maharajji led kirtan or explained divine philosophy or talked to people. So, for some years, this stage of Sri Maharajji's life went on. The next stage was when Sri Maharajji started to formally reveal the devotional knowledge, giving public lectures. His first public lecture was at the Chitrakoot Sammelan, where Maharajji had invited all the saints and Jagadgurus and scholars of all of India, all the main ones, to come and lecture. From that time, in 1955, Maharajji started giving public lectures. Although he had privately answered devotees' questions informally, but he had never given a formal lecture. So from 1955, when Maharajji was 33 years old, he started lecturing publicly. And just a couple of years after that, he became Jagadguru. Guru means one who is divine, who has gone beyond Maya, and who has the power to remove the effect of Maya from another soul who surrenders to them. But Jagadguru, although all gurus are true saints, if someone is beyond Maya, they're qualified to be called a guru. But a Jagadguru, this term is used for a saint who reveals a great extent of the divine knowledge. Although all divine saints have complete divine knowledge, even the ones who behaved as illiterate villagers, they also had complete divine knowledge. But only some saints occasionally reveal to a great extent the divine knowledge. So in certain cases, a saint may be given the title of Jagadguru. The Jagadguru has debated against all the scholars of that time who unanimously accept that saint, that nobody can argue with what this saint is saying. The path being shown, the philosophy, the way it's being described, it cannot be argued with. If someone is able to get everybody, all the elite scholars of their time to agree with them, they are given the title of Jagadguru. So in Kali Yuga, there have only been, before Sri Maharajji, there were only 4 Jagadgurus. Jagadguru Shankaracharya, then Nimbarkacharya, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya. Sri Maharajji was the 5th. So it's a very rare thing for all the scholars of India to agree that this person deserves the title of Jagadguru. We use the term Adi Jagadguru to denote that because most of those Jagadgurus, they established a lineage of disciples who also took on that title of Jagadguru after their master had left the world, because they were looking after their master's ashram, so they also took the title of Jagadguru. which means that even today there are Jagadguru Shankaracharyas in the world. Jagadguru Ramanujacharya, Nimbarkacharya, there are people with that name in the world today. But when we say Adi Jagadguru Shankaracharya, it means the original Jagadguru. Because the other Jagadgurus who followed Shankaracharya ji and took his name, they didn't travel around India and debate against all the scholars. They inherited that name from him. Same with Jagadguru Ramanujacharya, Nimbarkacharya, Madhvacharya. So we refer to the original Madhvacharya by adding the word Adi. Shree Maharaj Ji also became Jagadguru, as opposed to the way that the other Jagadgurus did it, where they traveled around India and debated one-on-one or one-on-two with the main scholars of that time, and eventually they all came to accept him. Shree Maharaj Ji met them all in one place. Kind of like when Shree Maharaj Ji was younger, around I think 18 or 19, there was a story told that he went to a stick fighting competition. He wasn't in the competition, but he was there watching, and two stick fighters would get in the ring together, like with a long staff, and they'd fight. I mean, there were certain rules they had to follow, but it was a competition. So young Shree Maharaj Ji got in the ring, just surprising everybody. And it's not like he was a big burly guy at that time. He was just a young man. You know how lean Maharaj Ji looks. And he got in that ring and he challenged many of those fighters at the same time. He said, "Give me a stick." And he got in there and he said, "I don't think any of you can touch me with your stick." And they were a little hesitant to go against Maharaj Ji. They didn't even know if he had any experience with this. And how could all of them gang up on him at the same time? But Maharaj Ji said, no, you all have to come. All at once try to hit me. And Maharaj Ji was so swift with that stick. He didn't hit anybody, but he just defended himself and blocked everything. And even though many of them attacked him at the same time, none of them could touch him with their stick. And eventually they hit his stick so hard it broke, and he just jumped out of the ring. And that was it. But none of them could touch him. Something like that, Maharaj Ji took on all the scholars of India at the same time in Kashi. In fact, they called him, the Kashi Vidvat Parishad had been hearing about Shree Maharaj Ji's greatness, the amazing depth of his knowledge. So they actually invited him to Kashi, to Varanasi, basically to fight, to debate. Okay, you come, give a lecture, and we're going to show our greatness by pointing out all the mistakes you make and by debating you and defeating you. That was their plan. So Shree Maharaj Ji came, but none of them, not a single one, more than 500 of the greatest scholars of India, all gathered at one place to listen to Shree Maharaj Ji's Sanskrit lectures, and not a single one could point out a single mistake, and not a single one was willing to debate anything against Shree Maharaj Ji. So at the end of his series of lectures, they had their meeting and they decided, well, according to our traditions, we have to offer him the title of Jagadguru. But of course, as you heard, the manner in which Shree Maharaj Ji received this title was very special, different than how the other Jagadgurus had received theirs. And these scholars not only asked Maharaj Ji to accept the title of Jagadguru, they asked him to accept the title of Jagadguru Tam. Uttam means supreme, the highest. They gave him the title of Jagadguru Uttam, the supreme Jagadguru, which indicates two things. It means that out of all the Jagadgurus living in the world today, none of them is an Adi Jagadguru, so it differentiates Shree Maharaj Ji from them. But it also distinguishes him from the previous Adi Jagadgurus. what distinguished Maharaji aside from the manner in which he became Jagadguru? It was the way he revealed the knowledge. He was able to do it in a way that reconciled and reaffirmed what all the previous Jagadgurus had said. Whatever they taught, Sri Maharaji reaffirmed it and reconciled it so that it all made sense together. Nobody had ever done that before. Nobody on earth had the ability to make sense of all of it together. To say that, okay, if Shankaracharya said this, but Ramanujacharya said something opposite, how does it all make sense together? One of them must be right and one of them must be wrong. In this way, there are many apparent contradictions if you examine the teachings of our saints and scriptures even within the same scripture, there would appear to be many different contradictions. Sri Maharaji first pointed out all of these contradictions and then he reconciled them. So these scholars were amazed. These lifelong, elderly, respected scholars were all experts in their one little silo of spiritual, scriptural knowledge. They had the knowledge just like if one of them was a scholar of Brahma Sutra. But he was a scholar of a specific bhashya of the Brahma Sutra, a specific explanation by a specific Jagadguru. He wasn't an expert in all the explanations of the Brahma Sutra, let alone the other darshan shastras, let alone the other scriptures. In other words, all those experts of each individual area of our Sanatan Dharma, they were all gathered together. So they each had the knowledge of a specific part of the Sanskrit scriptures, but Sri Maharaji brought it all together for them so they could see how it all meshed together into one big system that made perfect sense. This is why they gave him the title of Jagadguru Tam and Nikhila Darshan Samanvayacharya, the one who was able to reconcile all the apparent contradictions, not only in our scriptures and teachings of our saints, but even among other religions. So they were amazed and they felt themselves very fortunate to be able to ask Sri Maharaji to accept this title. And Sri Maharaji did accept this title and he became Jagadguru. So this started another stage in Maharaji's life where he became much more formal. Before that, although he was giving proper satsang, kirtan, going around talking to devotees, meeting people, but he didn't necessarily follow any set schedule. He could show up in a town anytime, he could just leave anytime, he could show up at someone's house anytime. And although he was controlling his bhav state, he still revealed that quite often when he was leading chanting. People would see him, not just what was inside, but what was inside came out, and Maharaji became absorbed in the bliss of the love of Radha Krishna. That happened a lot in those days. And then when Sri Maharaji became Jagadguru, he further increased his level of formality and concealed his inner state of bliss even more. And traveled around India on a regular schedule, lecturing in all the different towns. So Maharaji had different stages in his life where, according to how he was going to grace the souls, he adjusted what part of his inner state he revealed to the outer world. When the time came for Sri Maharaji to leave this world, he simply returned into that natural divine state. He entered into his bhav state. this is a divine event. It's a divine happening. It's not something we can understand. It's not something even the most intelligent person in the world can understand. But it's enough for us to know that Sri Maharaj Ji was divine when he came in this world. Everything he did while he was here was divine. And his going from this world was also a divine event. His going from this world was pre-planned, and it happened in a perfect divine way. And we call that Mahaprayan Divas. However, this is in many ways a misnomer. It doesn't represent the actual situation. Prayan means Maharaj Ji would have to have left. But it's not so much that he left. It's that his leelas that were visible to us finished. So we're unable to see his physical presence anymore. We're unable to see him around us, but he hasn't actually gone anywhere. That's the practical situation, the actual situation. He's still here. When we were listening to his lecture earlier today where he was describing that it's not up to a guru to accept a disciple, it's up to a spiritual seeker to accept the divine personality as their guru. When Sri Maharaj Ji was here, whether somebody met him on TV, they watched his lecture on television and they were living in some other country far from Sri Maharaj Ji, or whether someone met him physically, the process was the same. The internal process of accepting Sri Maharaj Ji as one's guru was something that you felt in your heart. You decided, I want Sri Maharaj Ji to be my guru. He's divine. I want to receive his grace and I want to follow what he's teaching. That was the whole process right there. Somebody thought that, it's done. It means you've accepted Sri Maharaj Ji as your guru, and that creates that devotional link, that devotional circuit, just like an electrical circuit. Now you made the connection, and just like electricity flows when you make the connection, you made that internal connection with Sri Maharaj Ji, and his grace started flowing. And you receive the benefit of that grace when you practice Rup Dhyan and you feel Bhav, which is a reflection of that divine Bhav state of Sri Maharaj Ji and Radha Krishna. You feel that Bhav due to Sri Maharaj Ji's grace. That's the actual form of his grace in your heart. You experience his grace when you realize something, meaning something clicks in your mind. Oh, I've heard that so many times. I've heard Maharaj Ji explain that, but today I understood it. That's his grace. When Sri Maharaj Ji was physically visible in this world, whether someone had physically met him or not physically met him, they could establish that devotional circuit with him and start getting his grace and progress on the path. There was no difference between the one who had met him and the one who hadn't met him. Meeting Sri Maharaj Ji physically was according to the desire of the devotee. They may go and meet Sri Maharaj Ji. And that may allow them to deepen their feelings of connection with Sri Maharaj Ji. But it didn't mean that the one who hadn't physically met Sri Maharaj Ji couldn't receive his grace. It depends on the person. How stable is that circuit that you've established? How much is your mind attached to him? Now let's look at today's situation. Sri Maharaj Ji is invisible to us right now. Just like the one who hadn't physically met Maharaj Ji but watched him on TV or heard about him from a preacher or read one of his books. In fact, Shree Maharaj Ji now, although he's invisible to us, he's still here because not only can those who met Maharaj Ji and or surrendered to him in their heart, accepted him as their guru while he was physically visible on earth, not only are they still able to receive his grace, which is the case with all saints. Anyone who surrendered to a saint while that saint was physically present on earth, the saint will keep gracing and guiding that soul for the rest of that soul's life, whether the saint has left the earth or not. So of course that's the case for us with Shree Maharaj Ji, but what's different in Shree Maharaj Ji's case is that even those who didn't know of Shree Maharaj Ji while he was physically present or physically visible on this earth, even new people are able to create or establish that devotional connection with Shree Maharaj Ji and start receiving his grace in the same way that the person who just happened to see him on TV but didn't get the chance initially to meet him physically was still able to start receiving his grace even before meeting him physically. In the same way, nowadays, anyone who hears about Shree Maharaj Ji can still accept him as their guru and receive his grace in the very same way. And there are many people sitting here tonight who are proof of that fact. Your own experience tells you that you are receiving Shree Maharaj Ji's grace. You know that because your worldly attachments are reducing and your bhav for Radha Krishna is increasing. And the only way for that to happen is with Shree Maharaj Ji's grace. And you didn't meet him while he was physically visible on earth. So it means he's still physically present. Just we lack the divine eyesight to be able to see him. So the opportunity to benefit from Shree Maharaj Ji's grace is still here. We don't, how long, what's the plan? We don't know. But at least now we can still, even a brand new person can still accept Shree Maharaj Ji as their guru. This is why calling this Mahaprayan Divas is a misnomer, because in fact Maharaj Ji is still physically present here. He hasn't gone anywhere. We can physically feel and experience his presence in our Rup Dhyan. And a new person who's just coming to this path can establish that devotional circuit with Shree Maharaj Ji, which is normally only possible with a saint who's still in their physical body on earth. Normally, you can't make a departed saint your guru. You can't make Tulsidas your guru. You can't get his grace. He's gone from this world. But for some divine reason, because of some divine plan, Maharaj Ji's grace is still available here on this earth. So people can still decide to make Maharaj Ji their guru and receive the benefit of that. On this day we commemorate Mahaprayan Divas, but it doesn't mean that we're in sorrow. It doesn't mean that we're really talking about Maharaj Ji having left. No, he's still here with us. Nothing has changed. Just like Maharaj Ji used to come to the hall at certain times throughout the day, say Mangar sadhana is going on, there were certain fixed times where Shree Maharaj Ji would come and give darshan or lecture or lead kirtan, and during the other times he was back in his room and we were sitting in the hall doing sadhana, doing Rup Dhyan. What's different now? He was invisible to you when he was in his room and you were sitting in the hall doing sadhana. What's changed? Nothing. He's invisible to us, but he's still here. So on Mahaprayan Divas, we think deeply about our connection to Shree Maharaj Ji. How well have we established that devotional circuit with him? The more we do sadhana according to how he's taught us, and the more we do seva to Shree Maharaj Ji, the cleaner that connection becomes and the more profound that circuit is, allowing us to receive more and more of His grace and experience deeper and deeper the evolution, the deeper and deeper evolution of our devotional bhav and the presence of Radha Krishna with us. I'll continue on this topic Sunday morning. I'll be talking about some of the ways that Sri Maharaj Ji reconciled the apparent contradictions. Just like someone may ask, there are so many forms of God. Why can't there just be one God? Why are there so many religions? People get confused and even disturbed about these various situations when they look at spiritual philosophy. But Sri Maharaj Ji reconciled all of this in a nice, neat package, in a nice, simple, logical way that removes all the doubts and confusions. So I'll talk about some of the main topics that Sri Maharaj Ji reconciled, although there were dozens. There were so many contradictions He reconciled. We'll take a few of these main ones and try to understand what the simple resolution to that is. I'll continue with that on Sunday morning. So now let us do a few minutes of kirtan. Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda
Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda 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 Guru Govinda
Guru 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 Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
गोविंदा गोविंदा गुरु गोविंदा
Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda
जगद्गुरु श्री कृपालु जी महाराज की